You're having one of those days. You're sitting on the bathroom floor or the kitchen floor or wherever it is people go when things get too heavy, and you're crying. And then, without any sound, without you calling it, your dog walks in, not running, not excited, just walks in quietly and sits down right next to you. Maybe it puts its head on your knee. Maybe it just stays there. And for a moment, you feel genuinely less alone. Every dog owner has had some version of that moment. And every single one of them has wondered the same thing. Did my dog actually know I was upset? Or did it just happen to walk in at the right time? That question has a real scientific answer. And it is not the one most people expect. Because it turns out dogs don't just react to the sight of you crying. They can detect your emotional state before you've made a single sound or shed a single tear. Not because they're magic, because of something much stranger. The science on this goes much deeper than dogs are loyal, and dogs love us. It touches on something researchers didn't expect to find, that dogs appear to experience a version of what you feel when you cry. Not just recognize it, but feel something close to it themselves. And that changes everything about what's actually happening in that bathroom floor moment. Researchers separate the dog crying question into 3 layers. Detection. Can a dog even tell something is different about you? Recognition. Does it understand that what it's detecting is distress? And response. Does it do anything specifically because of that distress, or just because you're behaving unusually? For most of the 20th century, scientists assumed dogs were only doing the third thing, responding to unusual behavior, without any real understanding of what the behavior meant. The data that came back changed that picture completely. In 2012, researchers Deborah Custance and Jennifer Mayer at the University of London ran a study that should be the most famous piece of dog research most people have never heard of. They had 18 pet dogs watch their owner, and then a complete stranger either cry, hum, or have a casual conversation. The result, 15 out of 18 dogs approached and made physical contact with whichever person was crying. Not whichever person they knew, not their owner, whichever person was in distress. And they did it with lowered heads, tucked tails, soft body language. The posture dogs use when they're trying to offer comfort, not seek attention. Mayer noted specifically that the dogs were responding to the person's emotional state, not their own needs. When the same person hummed or talked, the dogs barely responded at all. What triggered the approach, every time, was the distress signal, not the presence of a human. Now here is the part that changes the entire conversation. In 2022, animal psychologist Clara Wilson and her team at Queen's University Belfast asked a question nobody had tested before. Can dogs detect human stress not from behavior, not from sound, but purely from smell? They collected breath and sweat samples from 36 people. Before and after those people did a fast-paced, stressful mental arithmetic test. Blood pressure and heart rate were measured to confirm actual physiological stress. Then those samples were placed in a scent lineup in front of 4 trained dogs. The dogs identified the stress samples from the relaxed samples with an accuracy rate of 93.75%, and they did it blind. The researchers didn't know which sample was which during the test. The dogs didn't need the person in the room. They just needed the smell left behind. Wilson's conclusion was stark. Dogs don't need to see you cry. They don't need to hear you. Your body chemistry changes the moment stress begins, in your breath, in your sweat. And that change has a smell that dogs have apparently learned to read. And it goes even further than just detection. In 2024, researcher Zoe Park-Cortez at Bristol Veterinary School tested what actually happens inside a dog when it smells human stress. Not what it does, what it feels. Dogs were given a bowl in an ambiguous location, one that might or might not have food. Before approaching it, they were given either a stressed human scent or a calm human scent to sniff. Dogs who smelled the stress scent were significantly more hesitant to approach the bowl. They were, in measurable behavioral terms, more pessimistic. What that means is that a dog detecting your stress isn't just gathering information. The stress is transferring. The dog doesn't just know you're upset. It starts to feel some version of that unease itself. Scientists have a name for what just described: emotional contagion. It's the same mechanism that makes you yawn when someone near you yawns, or feel uneasy in a room full of anxious people. You absorb the emotional state around you without choosing to. In 2014, researchers Young and Ruffman played 75 dogs a recording of a human baby crying a baby babbling, and white noise. They measured cortisol, the stress hormone, before and after. The dog's cortisol spiked specifically in response to the crying. Not the babbling, not the noise, just the distress signal. That's not a trained response. Those dogs had never been taught to associate crying with anything. Their bodies just reacted, the same way a human body would react to a cry nearby. The stress arrived automatically. In 2020, psychologist Joshua Van Borg and animal behaviorist Clive Wynn at Arizona State University ran one of the more quietly extraordinary dog experiments in recent years. They put 60 pet dogs through 3 separate scenarios. In the first scenario, the owner was locked inside a large box and called out for help, sounding distressed. In the second scenario, the same box had high-value food treats inside it. No person, just the reward. In the third, the owner was inside the box again, but calmly reading a book aloud. Dogs were as likely to open the box to free their distressed owner as they were to open it to get to the food. And they opened it far more often for a distressed owner than for a calm owner reading aloud. Here's the detail researchers kept highlighting. Dogs who failed to open the box didn't fail because they didn't care. They failed because they couldn't figure out the mechanism. The ones who were capable of opening it and didn't were significantly rarer and showed visible signs of stress themselves while their owner called for help. Now, the standard counterargument is this. Dogs approach crying humans because they've been rewarded for it before. Someone cried, the dog came over, the dog got pet, so it learned to repeat the behavior. That's not empathy, that's just conditioning. And that's a fair argument. Except it runs into a problem. Dogs approach crying strangers at nearly the same rate as their own owners in Custance and Myers' study. If this were purely conditioned reward-seeking, the dog's own history with its specific owner who gave it treats and pets should have dominated. It didn't. The emotional contagion data also complicates the conditioning story. Dogs' cortisol rising in response to a recording of a baby cry in a controlled lab with no human present, no history of reward for that specific sound, is not a learned response. It's a physiological one. Here's something worth sitting with. Pigs were given a similar emotion comparison test in that 2024 animal behavior study by Park-Cortez and colleagues. Pigs are highly intelligent animals. They score comparably to dogs on many cognitive tests. But the pigs were more distressed by humming than by crying. They didn't show the same prioritization of distress signals at all. Dogs reacted differently. Not because they're more intelligent, but because over roughly 15,000 years of living inside human spaces, tracking human emotional signals was specifically useful to dogs in a way it simply wasn't for pigs. They didn't just live near us. They evolved alongside our emotional vocabulary. So what does all of this actually add up to? Dogs don't just notice that you're crying. They detect the chemical change in your body before the tears start. They experience a version of the emotional state themselves. They're specifically motivated to do something about your distress, not just approach you, but in some cases, actively try to free you from it. And they've been shaped by 15,000 years of evolution to prioritize exactly that signal over almost everything else. That's not a dog that happened to walk in at the right time. That's 15,000 years of coevolution arriving exactly on schedule. Which brings us back to that bathroom floor. You didn't call your dog. You didn't make a sound it hadn't already heard before. But something in the air changed. Something in your chemistry shifted, and your dog felt it before it even reached the doorway. It didn't walk in because it happened to be passing. It walked in because, in the only language it actually speaks, it already knew. So maybe the question was never whether your dog knows when you're crying. Maybe it's this: how much of what you feel in that house, the quiet worry, the slow-building stress, the things you never say out loud, has your dog already been carrying with you without you ever knowing it was there?